Well, what the hell happened to my truck, hey? Look at this. This is the PRIMAL RC Raminator with a whole bunch of extras I have on it, and I beat the living piss out of it the other day. Let me start off by doing this for you. My head is the size of the tire. Look at this. This truck is like an end table on your sofa. This is like a coffee table with an 80cc engine in there. I just installed the RCMAX Supreme 80 or 80 Supreme or whatever you want to call it. Massive torque. This engine is insane. In fact, I only put a tank and a half, almost 2 tanks through it when I had filmed the last video when I twisted this truck up into like a pretzel. The insane torque on it is amazing. I can see why it did not come like this out of the box, so to speak, because this truck, if it came with this engine, would literally, if you hit somebody going full speed on the top gears, rip someone's leg off, and it would just be dangling by a tendon and an artery or two, because solid axles, aluminum, everything on this truck being 80 pounds, it took me 75 yards just to slow the truck down enough to turn it. So today what I need to look at, if you didn't see the last video, number one, you can check that out. It was absolutely bonkers with the power. I put the tallest gears I could in there, meaning I had a 30-tooth pinion with a 20-tooth spur gear, which means I didn't have massive torque on the low end, which I can get with a clutch adjustment, which I'm going to do in the future after I find out what's wrong and get the new parts in here. But the high speed, I couldn't even get to 50% throttle, and I was covering 150 yards. It was massive amount of room. And so this is insane in the membrane, but I got to see what's wrong, figure out what's wrong with the transmission, because right at the end of the video, I'll show you right now. I already took the cover off of the transmission, but I'll give you a walk around to show you how much damage from the massive amount of torque I had bent it in half. And you can say it's an overpriced piece of shit if you want. That's because you don't have one. This thing is actually insane. I know I've said that enough. Every time I say the word insane, everybody should take a shot of whiskey, except for the miners. Those guys should be on the gold mine getting hard to work. Number one, when I started the video, I powered down and I took off and I turned a little too quickly, and I ended up doing a stoppie and rolling forward on my front before the whole truck went over. That was just my shitty driving. Look at this. This was the prototype cage from RCMAX. This was Mike Taylor's personal cage he sent me. Just the back piece to protect the exhaust, which it did. But the 80-pound truck with that much kinetic energy traveling the way it did, it totally bent it off to the side. All this is metal. It needed to have a cross brace in there just so it kind of gave it a little bit more rigidity. But again, it's mounting up to an already plastic roll cage, which normally you would want a lightweight plastic cage like this because it can take a bash. It will, like, if it rolls over, it'll bend and then it'll just pop back. Whereas if you have a metal cage, if you have a bad landing, you're going to bend it. But I'll tell you what, keeping it light on top is where it's at. This does have sway bars. Look at this, there's a sway bar there. All the weight is down where the axles are. If you watch in the previous video, you'll see there was quite a few times where it looked like it was going to roll over, but instead I was able to save it. There was many times. And when I went and do the catwalk and I was torquing down on this 80cc engine with the 30-tooth pinion on there, there was just so much power. I don't even know what to say by the time that engine gets to 6 tanks in, because it's just going to be massive. And like I said, I'm going to be able to tune the clutch, so we're going to be able to pull wheelies with this no problem. But look at these back shocks, hey? Look at this. I almost need titanium shocks because these are dual back shocks. Everybody always says, oh, your shit is too stiff, you know, your monster truck should soak up the jumps, which I've never seen a monster truck soak up jumps. They always bounce like they're a basketball when they jump and they land. But same thing here, look at this. When it came down and this nice stiff suspension, when it's under power and under load, you watch this as it pulls away. It still wants to pull that front tire up from the torque twist of the engine. You need double back suspension or at least exceptionally stiff springs because this whole end just wants to sag down under that power, right? Which is amazing. So when I was doing that catwalk and I was like up in the air and I kind of walked my tires forward like that, the insane, look at the width of my hand. In fact, just let's get a friggin' tape measure right now. This is 8 inches wide. I know the camera looks like it says 7, but totally it is 8 inches wide. This had such massive power that these tires were ballooning and I was only getting traction on about that much of the tire, right? Because when they balloon like a pizza cutter shape, they start to come out and the surface area gets smaller, which makes it incredibly hard to control, which means I would rather, because now that I've seen it go way too fast, even though people will be like, it's never too fast, and I totally get that, but there is a point for me where it stops being super fun, where it's out of control fast and I can't get it to go full throttle. But I would rather have a nice mix of wheelies and immediate power. This thing for me doesn't need to be a race truck. If you want yours to be a race truck, I highly encourage it. The RCMAX engine, no doubt, will be one of the engines you'll want to look at, and you know, that will make it a race truck. But here's something we didn't cover in the last one, right? We saw these two shocks were bent. Shocking, eh? No pun intended. But then on this side we missed. There's only a few people that saw. Look at that. This one is also bent as well, that shock shaft. And this one here, slightly bent. So all 4 of these were damaged. Now these aren't overly expensive on the PRIMAL RC on the PRIMAL RC website. You can get 2 of these, I think, for like $80 or in that area. But you know, having them bend like that, it doesn't come stock with that much power. It doesn't come stock to bend anything like that. But when you go insane and you get these aftermarket companies that are offering, you know, off-the-wall engines, you are going to be having all that potential energy turning into kinetic energy, turning it, and when you hit something or land wrong, all of that force has to go somewhere. And since not a lot of it is made out of plastic, you're going to have it transfer. And instead of having it bend like a cage would, and bounce back, you're going to have it bend and stay there. So that's what we're looking at, you know, right here. Look at this. But wow, now you can see, once you get past that wheelie bar, you can see they're bowed out quite a bit, hey? So that's very interesting for me to know. Now, what's going on with the engine? What am I talking about over here? Why is this cover off? Number one, you got to be careful because there's a duplex chain in here. But look at this. I got nothing in the transmission in here. Now listen. So engine works fine. There's something in the transmission that's not liking it. So this is not grabbing anything. It feels. So is it a snapped pin? I don't know. Which will be good for me to access the transmission underneath. Okay, now that I have it lifted up, I was going to start backing it off, and I thought you guys probably want to see everything here. So there is the transmission housing right there. You can see my hex bit is actually touching right here. So I have to undo 6 screws, 1, 2, 3, and then 3 on the top. But first I must remove that drive shaft. Then this is exactly where you change the gear ratio anyway. This is the pinion and this is the spur on the inside right here. And this might be a helpful tip if you are a Raminator owner or if you're thinking of getting one. This massive drive shaft, both on the front and on the back of the transmission, I noticed that my drive pins would fall out quite a bit. They would vibrate loose, even if they had red Loctite in them. So I would just take a zip tie, put it all the way around so that pin can never really back out, and then cut it with some flush cutters, and then you never have to worry about that drive pin falling out, like it did to me when I drove all the way out to the mountains to do a great video and I lost my drive pin in the snow. Darn it! Remove that, drop the drive shaft. Okay, now we get to take the plate off. Okay, so here is the pinion gear, and here is the spur. This is ultimate speed right here. So it would be turning this smaller spur gear very, very fast, which gave us the high-end speed. Let's just remove this piece here. Okay, so I took a few minutes off camera just to kind of look at the instruction book at the parts explosion as much as I could see of the transmission itself. Unfortunately, it didn't go into great detail. It only showed how to change the gears. It didn't show the internals. In fact, that actually came pre-assembled on the truck, so I never actually had a good look at how the reverse gear worked. And yes, this monster truck has reverse, which is very unusual to have a truck this size, but if you're going to have the weight anyway, you might as well have reverse gear, and so that's servo operated. Now that is like a small transmission that has little dogs on it. Dogs are like little feet that kind of push into the gear and engage it. Now, in fact, I'll just show it to you right here. Right there. Those are the dogs, and you can see that center splined drive shaft right there. And I thought, okay, well, that's pretty cool. But I couldn't quite see exactly how it was done. And I'm looking at this, and I'm like, well, that's weird how they had two pieces like come together. How did they get that to engage? And of course, I was just being a complete idiot because what I'm looking at is a clean snap. That is a drive shaft that held this gear on, this huge tooth gear, and snapped it clean. It didn't like twist it. I almost dropped it there. It didn't twist it, but if you look in, come on, back to focus. Look at the very end of that shaft. It looks like it's got like a small ridge to it. Machinists would know what I'm talking about, but it looks like a small ridge right there. That's where it snapped. And what's really unusual about this is I know Primal went to like extra lengths to ensure that the output drive on the other side, right, that right there is the spur gear. They made sure that the spur gear had extra strength to that material. But I've beaten the crap out of my truck since I've had it. Like, I've had this truck for, is it coming up to a year? And I've had it through a -40 winter already. I've had a different engine in it, and then I upgraded it to this big 80cc, which is almost twice to spec as what was supposed to be in this truck. And of course, when you have that much rotating mass, when you have that much potential energy turning into kinetic energy, anything you do is going to end up just transferring from one thing to the other. And if you think about it, all that power comes down to this little shaft being driven direct off the clutch bell housing and that main pinion gear. And what I mean by that is this gear right here, the pinion gear behind that. Like, that's a lot of power being transferred to that shaft right there. So this is going to give an opportunity to aftermarket part makers or even a Primal RC. Maybe they'll be able to come out with some sort of tougher material like titanium or something for that, because I would love some titanium, like I said, for the shocks And it looks like this piece, if I'm going to overpower this, I may need to upgrade this overall. But hey, every RC I own on the wall, everything around here, that's why I'm in the hobby, can be upgraded, right? Like if it just came working 100% of the time, it would be awesome, but it would kind of take away from the mechanics part, which I also love. So there you go. Overpowered, busted it, broke it, jumped it, catwalked it, looking forward to tuning it, got some new parts on order right now. Guys, let me know what you think about the Primal RC Raminator. Good, bad, the ugly. I want to know. Leave it in the comment section down below. Smash the like button for me. I want to see 10,000 like clicks. I don't know if I've had a video that hit 10,000 in the first month that it was out. So do that for me, and we'll see you in the next episode of RC Adventures. Yeah? Now get outside and have fun with RC, and if you don't have one, think about getting one. Do some research. There's tons of videos. I got 1,500 of my own, and there's lots of great RC video producers on YouTube. Make sure to push RC into the search bar up above and check them out. Bye, guys.